watching Sioux City School.
You're watching Sioux City School. You're watching Sioux City School.
So some things have changed in the past year. In a way, I feel like this is kind of a little bit of a report card test here, and I've got a tough group to measure up to, but to compare maybe some of the things I said a year ago and where we are today. So I think I'll just share two quick stories with you from the last 24 hours. So before I came over here, I spent about 45 minutes with a Boston Globe reporter. And his story is about the Globe is picking 3 gateway cities to talk about their downtown redevelopment and their vision of the future of the city and what the role of the state is. And so it's a pretty challenging conversation for 45 minutes. But what struck me walking over here, thinking about a year, is a year ago, the Globe was not sending anyone down to downtown Brockton to talk about the revitalization of downtown Brockton, what our vision of the future of the downtown is. So I'm taking that as a pretty good sign. And this wasn't Globe South, this was the real Globe. So I mean, I'm taking that as a pretty good sign that we must be making some progress, that if the Globe's down here to talk to us about what's going on downtown. So I think that's one change from when I was here a year ago. I think of almost everyone here at the table, I want to say thank you, because I don't think there's very many people here at this table that I haven't asked for help with something in the past year. And I appreciate the fact that that you're all available and willing to help when I ask. I have to point out the 2 college presidents, because I think probably the most exciting day of my almost first year in office was the day that we announced that a state college campus was coming to downtown Brockton. And I have to thank Dr. Wall and Dr. Molifaria, because without the 2 of them, along with Keith Motley and the great partnership that we have formed, including the city in that partnership too, it would not have happened. And I really do believe of all the things that we can do for downtown development, bringing a college downtown is an absolute game changer for the city and for the downtown. So I just want to thank both of the college presidents for all their support and their help. Shortly after I was here last December, when I took office in January, the downtown college campus was not a new idea. Something's been talked about, and a couple runs have been taken at it over a number of years. And I was really interested in trying to take another run at it and get it back on track again. And so one of the first things I did in January is I called all 3 college presidents and asked them for a chance to come over and sit down with them personally at their offices. And I personally asked each of the 3 of them that I understood that, up to this point it hadn't got done, and we could spend a lot of time talking about why, but would they give me a commitment to take one more run at it with me? And they did, and all 3 of them made that commitment to me, and they all kept it. And there's been ups and downs over the past year, but we got there when I think most people said we weren't going to get there, but we did. And I really do believe that it's really, that school coming is the beginning of a new era for downtown Brockton. Because you look at any city like Brockton, particularly in Massachusetts, a manufacturing legacy city trying to figure itself out in the 21st century, and anywhere that the city's been successful in a turnaround, there's been a school involved. I can name you half a dozen cities that are doing well with schools. I can't think of one that's had a successful turnaround without a school. And I think that's why I think I put so many chips on that hand, playing that hand, because I knew if we were fortunate enough to get it done, it was going to be that important to the future of the city. So that's absolutely the most exciting day we've had in our first year. I'll comment on a couple of the other words. I don't want to take the time to go through all of them, I guess, but real estate taxes, I get it. I came within a last-minute appropriation at the end of the year with a gun to my head. of having a budget that didn't call for any new taxes at all. The budget I submitted in June was balanced with no new taxes. I made $3 million in cuts rather than use the 2.5% levy that's been used every year for as long as anyone can remember. You know, the power plant is the 600-pound gorilla that's still in the room that we've got to get resolved. And at the end of the year, I think we're close to a settlement, but we don't have one yet. And I got a $500,000 legal bill just to get to a settlement. And so I had to grudgingly sign off on a $500,000 appropriation that did incur, I think, a very small increase. It was it equaled 0.4%, 0.4%, as opposed to the 2.5% that it's been every year. And believe me when I tell you, I agonized for 5 days over it. I really wanted to veto it. If I'd had another week, I would have vetoed it. But the reality was that had I vetoed it, it would have prevented the third quarter tax bills from being mailed. And everyone would have received a double tax bill in the fourth quarter. And I think the negative impact of that far exceeded the negative impact of a 0.4% adjustment. And I do think I do have, whether I agree completely with where we are legally on the case with the power plant right now, one of the things I figured out my first year is, and I think everyone in this room is in the exact same position, whether you're the CEO of a private company or a college or government, you have to make tough decisions that sometimes are in the best interest of the organization. You may not 100% agree with philosophically yourself. And that's kind of the position that I was in, because I think at the end of the day, I do have an obligation to defend the city. I couldn't leave the city without money to pay lawyers that are working to defend the city. I don't know how I would defend that. But in spite of that, I think for you guys, it's pretty good news that we basically did hold the line on taxes. And the word that I gave is that I would only go back to the tax levy as a last resort when we needed money that we couldn't find anyplace else. And so I think I've kept my word on that. And I think that the tax rate, I think, Chris, they kept it exactly the same. So I think the first step in us getting Brockton's commercial tax rate in line with surrounding communities is being able to hold the fort for a while we see the others continuing to raise theirs, and that gap will close very quickly as we continue to do that. And so I think we did accomplish that this year.
I just want to comment on that. This is the first year in 18 years I've been going to this hearing that there wasn't this tremendous pressure. And that pressure had been relieved by this mayor approving a budget with no tax increase in June. So we were walking into splitting not a $3 million to $4 million increase between business and residential. We were really talking, we would have been talking about no increase on either side. However, as the mayor indicated, last Monday they voted $850,000, which added something to the levy. With that said, the rate for commercial, because residential values have come up a little bit, is 8 cents less per thousand valuation. So some businesses are going to see a little bit of a reduction, but the average tax bill, when you look at it, it's funny because when I sit down with Westgate Mall, they have it all plotted out since 1980, all the increases. And you see these huge jumps and then you see these little ones. This is on their chart, this is going to be the smallest they've ever seen, I think, in the history of that mall. And that's a credit to this mayor sticking his neck out and saying, not this year, we're not going to do it this year. And it made the business community's role there a lot easier.
Yeah, and actually, the addition to the levy was only $500,000 because the other $300,000 we took out of new growth. So the addition to the levy was only $500,000, and I did it reluctantly, but I did do it, and I do own it. So I'll comment on a couple of the other words that came up more than once. Safety. I think hopefully people can see that I do have a commitment to public safety. Fought like hell with the city council to get an extra $200,000 for police that they didn't want to give me, but we got it at the end because I know, Sue and I were just having this conversation during lunch, business districts have to be clean, safe, and well lit if the businesses are going to thrive. And so we're on demand on our police force right now. Tomorrow I'm looking at the candidates list. We're going to add 9 officers to the next academy. which will actually be a net gain of 2. I've got 7 vacancies, and I'm going to hire 9 so that we can grow 2 spots. And 2 spots doesn't sound like a lot, but it's $150,000. And I got to at least get it going in the right direction. But I think in terms of the school, I've made a commitment to the universities that if they brought the school down there, we'd have parking, we'd have lighting, we'd keep it clean, we'd keep it safe. And I meant it when we made that commitment. I have the same commitment to the business districts, and that's why the business owners love the motorcycle unit we brought in this year, because the motorcycles cover a lot of ground and they're highly visible, they're extremely versatile, and they can do things that cars and people on foot can't do. And so those are the types of commitments we're making. And I know we have mostly large organizations in the room here, but I'm also very committed to the small businesses in the city, because that's where I really believe the growth in our economy is here in the city, is small businesses, particularly immigrant-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and female-owned businesses. Because I think not only that's where our growth will be, but those are businesses that will also reinvest back in the city. And we don't have to look any further than Vicente's Market, I think, to see a great example of that, of a family that started here, worked hard, has built a business, reinvested, built a business, and now making a major reinvestment in the city. And I think that's what the future of Brockton looks like. And then I guess the other word I'll comment on before I give you a shot at me is heroin. So people who know me know that this has been a topic very close to me and something that I've lived in my own family for a number of years. And it's how I got involved in politics. I mean, it's why I ran for school committee. I can't begin to tell you how bad the problem is. I attended the school committee meeting with Kathy last night, and I came out an hour and a half later, and the police officer I was with said to me there were 3 overdoses during the time that you were inside at the meeting. Hour and a half, 3 overdose calls. It's past epidemic, it's crisis. I'm looking forward. I spoke with Kim and John. I want to have the same conversation with you. I've spoken with Dr. Herman at your hospital. It's great that when I came in my first month, I ordered Narcan on to all the police and fire. And a handful of fire departments had already done it. We were one of the first cities that had both police and fire, all of our first responders equipped with Narcan. And if I had to do it again, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But I think what we're realizing pretty quickly is, we're putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg with Narcan. It's keeping people alive, and it beats the alternative of allowing them to die today. But it's not addressing the underlying problem of addiction. It's not addressing all the stuff that goes on with prescription drug abuse. That's probably the most common link to heroin addiction. And so I appreciate the fact that the 2 hospitals are here, because I think in my State of the City address in January, this will be one of the issues I tackle. And it's a nonpartisan issue. I mean, you saw Charlie Baker yesterday coming out, and he's identifying it as one of his first priorities. I've spoken with Marty Walsh, and he's coming up with proposals for Boston for the first of the year. So, I mean, this is big cities, small towns, Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. It's just a crisis. All kinds of people are dying. And we are hit particularly hard with it here in Brockton, because I think that we not only pay the costs of having some of our residents become addicted to it, but we also pay the public safety costs of being a supermarket in this part of the state. We pay public safety costs in crime. If you talk to one of our police officers, they'll tell you that 90% of the property crime being committed in the city is being committed by people who are stealing to support a drug habit. And so anyone that thinks this doesn't affect them or it doesn't cost them anything, you're wrong. It's costing us all a lot of money. And there are a lot of lives being lost and families being really impacted. So I think we're all committed to trying to figure out what we can do better. And I think I'm probably going to take a very aggressive approach. And I'm hoping for an open conversation with the healthcare providers, because we need a bigger commitment on prescription drug monitoring. It exists, but it's not being complied with. And if we don't get everyone doing it, it doesn't work. So, I mean, I think that'll be one of our initiatives. I think I'm looking at maybe an office for addiction services in the mayor's office next year, so that families and people can have some sort of a referral center to connect with services. I met with President of High Point a couple weeks ago. I mean, I'm having the conversations with everyone I can think of, because it really is a crisis, and I think we have a moral obligation to do something about it. So that's my spiel on heroin. I'm just glad we say the word heroin at a business meeting nowadays, because when I started talking about this 9 or 10 years ago, I was the only person in the room that was willing to say the word heroin. So, questions? You got 10 minutes to grill me. I can go through more words if you don't want. I want to thank Ray particularly and Pat. You know, one of the crises I have had to deal with this year that I didn't expect was pedestrians being run over by cars. And Superintendent Smith also. Everyone has been great in trying. We've held a couple summits, we've held some meetings. We're working on educational programs with the schools, and Kathy and I have made a commitment to doing that. Ray has launched, with Pat's help, this great public awareness campaign that we just launched yesterday. You'll see signage on the BAT buses now. Ray was able to go out and find this Street Smart campaign that's a national model, and it's when you see it, it's pretty cutting edge. They brought me over one of the signs. The sign's got a picture of a very attractive young lady with a tire track right across her face, and whatever the sign says. I think it will catch people's attention. So I wish I could explain it, because the experts can't even explain it to me. Boston's had 5 pedestrian deaths this year. Brockton's had 9. If you take Taunton, Fall River, New Bedford, and Quincy and add them together, they're less than Brockton. So I think it's going to be one of those things that we're going to have short-term things, mid-term things, and long-term things that we need to do. And we are working very hard with it, and with the Department of Transportation, some other state agencies, BAT, schools, city agencies, law enforcement. So my quick spiel on it is, so you learn about stuff you never thought you were going to learn about. So I can now talk to you about pedestrian and bicycle safety. Engineering, education, and enforcement, the 3 E's. And we have initiatives in all 3. So we're looking at infrastructure around the city and short-term stuff in terms of signaling and signage and things like that. Longer-term stuff in terms of some street redesign on some of the major streets like Belmont Street. Education, as I mentioned, the schools have been great. We've launched the Safe Routes to Schools programs in the elementary schools. We're working on a video contest for middle school and high school kids, and I'm working on trying to get the state to bring a distracted driving simulator and park it at the high school for a week so the teenage drivers can go in and do a simulated experience of distracted driving. And then on the enforcement piece, when all else fails, ask for help. So I've asked the state police for help, and they've brought in, they're bringing in extra patrols 2 or 3 days a week strictly for traffic enforcement. And they are targeting high crash zones and school zones. And that's an overly simplistic answer, but it is one piece of the puzzle that if we can get drivers to slow down a little bit and be a little less distracted. The state troopers are specifically looking for drivers using electronic devices. That's their primary enforcement when they're coming in on these patrols, is they're looking for distracted drivers. They'll grab the other stuff too if you're stupid enough to drive by them at 80 miles an hour, but they're specifically looking and trying to write up violations for using an electronic device while driving. So that's been probably one of the biggest challenges. I think trying to deal with the homeless issue and this pedestrian issue have probably been the 2 toughest of my first year, because I don't think they're just real easy short-term answers for either one. But I know we got to do better than we're doing right now. Go ahead.
You've added a new person to your planning department?
We've added 2 people to the planning department. We've hired a planner, and then we've subsequently hired a junior planner. We've still kept our administrative support person that's been there, Pam, all along. And we've also funded the Main Street manager position, which is under the B21, but it's being paid for with CDBG fund money that I reallocated from the BRA. So we've committed to 3, and then the exciting news a couple days ago is the state picked us one of 10 gateway cities that they designate us to create a TDI, a Transformative Development Initiative. And so what I think is great about that compared to a year ago, 23 cities applied, 10 were chosen. Brockton was one of the 10 that were chosen. So I think it's great that at the state level, they're thinking that positively about us, that we were one of the 10 selected. I know that a year ago, we wouldn't have even applied. We wouldn't have even applied for it. Now, not only did we apply for it, we wrote a damn good project, and we got selected. And what makes me think of that, Peter, is that the next phase now, 3 of those 10 projects, 3 of those 10 cities are going to get us a fellow funded by the state for 3 years to work in the planning department, specifically to help with the downtown development. Now, we got a 3 out of 10 shot, but I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic that we really have a good shot at this, because I think the state is recognizing the difference here now, and I think that they'll have a willingness to invest some of their planning money, because they've seen us invest some of our money in planning. Key component, and I'll be the first one to tell you, it needs to be even more, but I think we've come a long way in a year.
Great. You're actually being kind too. The last 10 years they wouldn't have gone.
Okay.
Right?
It's exciting. It's exciting times. I was at an event last night, and someone came up to me and said, "How's it going?" I said, "Great." They said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, it is." Because, I don't think we're going to change the world in a day, but I can't help but think we got it going in the right direction. Jerry.
Bill, about 2 weeks ago, my son called, was up off of King Street, and said there's someone who just left his house taking a survey, asking his views about a casino at the Brockton Fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And I'm
So,
curious-
yeah, I'll tell you what I know. So I've met with Mr. Carney a couple times. They are planning to apply to the state for the Southeastern Mass Casino license located at the Brockton Fairgrounds. I think it's very early in the process. Generally, I'm supportive of it, but I need to know a lot more about it before I'm officially supportive of it. I mean, I think from the mayor's standpoint, I'd be looking for a substantial investment in infrastructure. I'd be looking for jobs. I'd be looking for a pilot to know how much money the city gets out of the deal. But overall, I think the reality is, and I know there'll be some pushback from people that live right near the fairgrounds. I expect that. I think the reality is that the time is coming very soon that the fairgrounds is going to be redeveloped as something else. It's the most valuable piece of commercial real estate in the city. It's not going to be the fair much longer. I understand the arguments on both sides. I think for a city like Brockton, when they brought back horse racing in 2001 for a year, I remember hearing the word racino back then, a small casino to go with the racing. I think it's a clean industry. I think we can negotiate our concerns in terms of traffic, public safety, infrastructure. I think if we're smart, we can negotiate all those commitments up front and get a good project. And I want development. I want good development, but I do want development. I think it's got the potential for hundreds of jobs and millions of dollars of revenue to the city. And I think I see it drawing a lot of business into the city for that, particularly that west side corridor between 24 and there. We've got to be concerned about impacts on the nearby neighborhoods, but I think with good planning and commitments up front, negotiations, I think you can address those and do a good project.
So Mayor Carpenter, I know you have a 1 o'clock.
Yeah,
so,
that's okay.
Do you want to keep going? Or?
No, I can do 1 or 2 more questions if anyone has
Okay,
them.
all right. 1 or 2 more questions?
Not a question, but a comment. I just want to praise all of us around the table for collaborations, because that's the name of the game, whether we're working with the city or among ourselves to make these good things happen. And I look around at some of the primary collaborators that I work with, and just wanted to say that. So keep those initiatives going where you get a lot of us collaborating together.
Absolutely, and I appreciate it, and I think it's true. I've asked almost everyone here at the table for some help with something at one time or another in this past year. So I think that in terms of, I think I was really supposed to talk about economic development and downtown redevelopment, but I think in terms of our approach to economic development, I think one thing I have tried to change is, I think we really are building a team approach to it. I mean, in this past year, we've got a new director at the BRA, we have a Main Street manager, I think we have a revitalized B21, we have a city planner, and we've got Chris here still at the chamber, and I really think that all of those folks are working extremely well together. I think that we partner on almost everything, at least some of us. And I think, and I need to include Pat in that too from a planning standpoint. So I think that's a difference. I think in the past it was a little more fragmented, maybe, you know, people operating in silos, not as much as in a team. And I think the team approach works, and so long as no one has too big of an ego, it'll work. And I think it is working, and I think that's one of the differences people perceive when they come in here. It's not that hard to come into Brockton and get a sit down with the Chamber and the Economic Development Agency and the BRA and the mayor and the planner. I think we've done it a number of times. Chris says, or Chris or Gary, whoever says they've got someone that's thinking about coming to Brockton, so get them in here. And we make ourselves available, and we try to impress upon them that we'll do everything we can to earn their business.
My name is Daryl Ellison, and I lost my only son, Carl Evan, in a hit-and-run accident. Carl was a joy beyond words. He was fun-loving. He had a great sense of humor. He had a strong work ethic. He went on at 16 years old, got a job at Shaw's Supermarket, and he worked there until the day he died. He was a very giving person. He never had any money. He was always giving his money away. He would pay for homeless people's meals, whatever he felt they needed. On Sunday, September 28th, Carl had just finished his job at Shaw's in Brockton, Massachusetts. He had crossed the street to go to the 7-Eleven. He was leaving the store at the corner of Belmont and West Street when he was struck and killed at 9:22 p.m. A surveillance camera picked up the vehicle as it was leaving the scene. Police believe the vehicle that hit Carl was a silver or gray minivan. It would have front end damage. There is a $5,000 cash reward for information leading to the apprehension of the person or persons responsible for Carl Evans' death. If you have any information, please call the Massachusetts State Police at 508-923-4205 or the Brockton Police at 508-941-0234. You may also send an email to justiceforcarl@hotmail.com. And to the driver, I believe that you are watching this. This must be a tormenting secret for you to keep. Please turn yourself in. And to those protecting you, please help your loved one do this. Carl Evan was my loved one, and he deserves justice. This is my quest. I have faith that you will do the right thing.
In Brockton, we swing for the fences so we can touch home.
We coach in Brockton to instill the teamwork that builds a great winning tradition.
We do business in Brockton because here you can find the taste of home away from home.
We keep our company in Brockton because we love this city.
I study and learn in Brockton to achieve my goals.
When Brockton is home, everything is within reach.